9 other Democrats did the same, and it ended with the bill being passed, and we'll kind of go over what that means and everything like that. We'll just rip through this one real quick. A generational divide seen in newer lawmakers' impatience with bipartisanship and for colleagues who don't understand new media has emerged as one of the deepest rifts within the party. I think this goes on to say that younger people were upset and then older people weren't. I'm not going to steal their work, but basically the whole big thing is, if we can get a rundown of I don't care about the old versus young shit. If they talk about a vote, that's what I'm looking for. Because, fuck it. The channel's called No Aim Assist. You're here for my bit, so we're here. The whole thing was a continuing resolution spending bill that the House Democrats all made a point to all reject. So basically, this spending bill needed to be passed, or some amount of the federal government was shut down, like the non-essential. Or honestly, I don't even know. I've never worked for the federal government. I know that people get furloughed for a time, and it's like a whole thing. People don't get paid. It's like a big deal, the government getting shut down. It's one of those things that a lot of people look at, and the Republicans were staring down the barrel of, because they know that there are some political consequences. It's one of the few things that there are, at least in America, one of the few things that there are electoral consequences for. It's pretty standard practice. So when the House Democrats put themselves out on that limb, it was because Chuck Schumer told him, yeah, we're going to all stand united against this bill that's coming across. The main reason, because it was authored in a partisan way. Only Republicans were consulted on this. It has quite a few things in it that just aren't no Democrat would ever put this in, because you understand that these bad things that Schumer himself, I think that's the biggest thing about this. If you go and you look up what Schumer has to say, Schumer himself admits this bill that he voted for, and the only reason that it was allowed to pass, from what I understand, they needed 60, and he was the reason they could get to 60 because they had Democrats on their side. So not only Schumer, but he obviously is the minority leader, so he has a bit of sway. So this coming over, to it, and betrayal of the House Democrats saved the Republicans from that shutdown. That's the really tough part. And he has admitted, this is a bad bill. But the real problem that I have with it is, if we did this, if we had some sort of shutdown, then Elon and Trump would be able to run crazy through the government and slash things at will and open things at will. My point is, they are already doing that. We are challenging them as best they can, but everything that's coming out is way too slow. You're seeing this stuff with the newest charges, the newest questions for Doge and Elon are, is any of this legal, and you're doing irreparable harm, so we need to sue you now. But this is 54 days in. For anybody who's wondering how long it took Hitler, 53 days. I think it's pretty ominous that the vote that we just witnessed, or I watched the Senate one last night, but I don't know the ins and outs of the bill. I watched a couple resolutions. Basically, the summary that I got was Democrats put forward quite a few amendments to bills to say, hey, we could have these few things thrown in, and then it would be something that we might vote for. Like, let's get all the veterans back who got fired their jobs. For, Elon came in and slashed a bunch of jobs. Some of those people were veterans. At least let the veterans back in. Just, one of those things kind of like play into the heartstrings. But hey, let's see if we can get them to come across the aisle and put something in there that's going to be positive. And then there was nothing. No Republicans voted for it, as far as I can tell. So speaking of no Republicans voted for it, let's look at the Democrats that turned on their fellow Democrats, because there was a split. Most of the Democrats in the Senate voted no against this, but 10 Democrats voted for this spending bill that I believe extends spending and gives quite a bit more spending and power to the executive to determine, like, the make spending decisions. This was signed into law because it's a long-term spending bill, and as far as I can tell, the reporting that I've seen on it is this is the first time a partisan authored bill, only one side authored it, was put in because of what you would need in the way of majority. You would need 60 votes. This is the first time that they've done it, and it's basically a surrender. That's why I'm calling it Schumer's surrender. Is he was ready. He told House Democrats that he was ready to shut the government down if Republicans weren't willing to budge on X, Y, or Z. We weren't saying X, Y, and Z. They were saying X, Y, or Z. They have to come to the table on one of these things. Democrats came to the table, gave this very reasonable, I think, reasonable term. Republicans said, screw you. It's not our fault if you vote for this, or if you vote against us for this bill. We'll just say that you are shutting down the government. That was the messaging from Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. If you vote against this, and when House Democrats did, because Chuck Schumer told them that the Senate Democrats would, when they voted no, but it still passed by that slim majority in the House, and then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate would need 60, I believe. That's when Schumer, in that 24-hour, 48-hour, whatever you want to call it, period, switched, and he decided he was going to go the other way. It's a blink in the face of a bluff that would have backfired on them. I understand what he's saying, and he understands government workings better than I do. I'll fully admit that. We're just looking at a picture of him here. Never met the man. But one of the things I do know is not enough meaningful stopping or whatever he thinks he's doing to curtail the current regime. He is not doing it in any meaningful way. So that's the big one here. We're going to go through my notes, make sure I did miss anything. I'm not going to go through this article because I'm not going to steal their stuff. I just like the picture. Quickly here, we're just going to make posts. You guys going to see how the sausage gets made. Actually, sometimes it's easier to copy from. They don't make anything easy, do they? Boom. You guys get to see the shameless self-promotion. I had highlighted what I needed already. Hate that I messed it up. Where's the posting? There we go. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Always post the blue sky first. Make sure everybody knows that we're live. And then we're back to checking on the stream health again. All right. Let's talk about the old Schumer surrender. So I got my notes down here. I'll just pull them up for you. We were looking at some stuff. I'll let you read some blue sky at the top here. But basically, this is what I had to say. The biggest part was the betrayal. It was the betrayal of the House Dems saying before they voted, that's going to bug me if that stays that way. There we go. Saying before the vote that you were going to stick with the House Democrats. I think AOC said it best. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said on, I think it was Blue Sky, I believe is where I read it. The whole thing is now you've torn a rift between yourself and House Democrats. And the only reason that you did it, your stated reason, is it was to avoid a Republican-led shutdown. They can say it was, the Democrats who voted for it. They could say, oh, we had a bill on the table, that sort of thing. But then your messaging shifts. They didn't work with us at all, and so we had to do what we had to do. It's insane that Chuck was played as easily as he was against his own side and hung them out to dry. The only thing I can think of similarly, and it's not like it's crazy, when you say you want to see, the Democrats start fighting dirty sometimes, you want to see them, stand up for themselves. It isn't taking the worst parts of the Republican Party, the parts that have given up, abdicated, great word for it, to Trump already. Don't take those parts. Take what would Mitch McConnell do? Don't get me wrong. Mitch McConnell, terrible. I wouldn't do anything that he did with the environment that he was in. He just stepped out of line completely. And the fact that we didn't set him right then as the Senate, people in the Senate didn't stand up, senators in the Senate didn't stand up, there wasn't something in place to stop something like that from happening, or if there was something directly in place, we must have ignored it because we're here today. And then as voters, the fourth thing, the big thing, we as voters, the people in his district didn't just vote him out, his state didn't just immediately vote him out. That's the biggest thing. You have to be able to do that. So that what would Mitch McConnell do is getting down and dirty in the mud like they would and pushing it right up into the line where it's not going to be enforced. Apparently, that's the whole thing. But not let's give up. Because the closest thing that this Senator Schumer thing, I think it is unprecedented, but it's the Langford bill on the border where senators told, I believe it's Senator Langford, his fellow senators who had the majority, I believe, or maybe were in the minority, not 100% sure there. But basically, they needed votes from the other side, so they told him to author a bill on the border. He took the time to do so, and they said they would vote for him, his bill, when he authored it. Hey, get this ready, have these provisions, talk it up with the other side, but make sure these are in it. He went across the aisle, got the votes, made did the thing, came back to him, and then Trump had switched his mind on, we don't want a border bill. We want to run on the border. We want to run on the fact that it's a problem. Which, if that doesn't ever tell you that there's just no integrity on the other side, I never know what I'm not going to use the names that they use, because I think we all know that they parade them around a little too much. But the victims of an immigrant or an illegal immigrant are sometimes paraded around to villainize one or the other, or sometimes to villainize asylees, because they're different things, all different groups to be treated, potentially differently with totally different laws. So when they parade around one of a victim of something like that, that's when you have to look at, do you actually care about this sort of thing? Because one person passing away is tragic. We would agree with you there. Like, you say this person's name like it's some bargaining chip, like some political game. I hear this person's name and that's tragic. That's somebody's family member. That's somebody's daughter. That's somebody's potential, like, it's terrible that it happened, obviously. But I think it's probably even more awful that the people who parade these victims around are the same ones who are willing to leave that same border they blame for her death the way it is in order to score some political points. So any victim between when that bill could have been passed and then after, I'm not going to go and parade victims. It's not what I'm going to go do. But the blood is on somebody's hands, and it is not mine. It is the people who would not see a bill authored, or, mind you, or let me correct my statement, saw a bill authored to fix these problems, but then when they were given the same bill that they asked for, had already switched and flipped on their fellow senator. That's really the only thing that I can see here is somewhat similar, and it's the worst parts. This isn't the fighting dirty that we were talking about. This is just fighting stupid. Cannot believe that and just like life, it's not fair. They did it, and they don't see any punishment for it. Maybe Schumer won't see any punishment for it. You see a lot of anger now. You see a lot of people online. They're making it like an old versus young thing. That may be false. It is the New York Times, after all, a rag. Let's go ahead and close out of them. We don't need them anymore because we got this. So it's New York Times, talking about old versus young. So they might just be trying to create a narrative or spin something for someone. Who fucking knows? Who fucking cares? My big thing is, will the young voters show up in his district that are so upset now when the time comes, potentially years into the future, when we're going to need those votes? This is with a lot of stuff. A new video game is coming out called Grand Theft Auto. In Grand Theft Auto, there might be elections that are held in Grand Theft Auto. Those elections might be upheld, or they might be subverted. The legitimacy of them might be subverted, and so you might have to take steps in order to save yourself in the game. They have voting in the game. So there's a potential that there might not be voting then. But I just went into something crazy. Back to Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, if he gets voted out, this would be a clear sign of a change. Maybe this old versus young. Maybe if you look at the demographics and you see young people come out. But I wouldn't be surprised to see if this is just a false narrative pushed by people like New York Times and people like Schumer, who's putting op-eds into the New York Times, which, if you've read the op-ed, it was just gross. It was so blatantly just gives the game away. Hey, I know I'm giving the game away, and I know this sucks, and I know this is bad, but I'm willing to do it because, it would be like tough. It would be tough. I would have to do more. It would be really tough, and it's not good. So somebody who puts out an op-ed in the New York Times, and then the New York Times kind of paints it in this light of old versus young. This is what an old party member would do. This is what a young party member would do. No, this is what cowards would do. Now let's look at a couple cowards, because that was the big thing. John Fetterman has come out and said, I would never vote for a government shutdown. Really? Never? Again, hate to just take everything from her, but my gal AOC said it best. So what if they introduced something that was just going to take away women's right to abortion federally? Just completely. Just gone. What if you were going to, there are so many terrible things you can think of to include in a bill that Republicans just proved if you put Democrats on the spot and say, it's your fault if this government shuts down, even though we're in charge of the House, we have control, we have the majority in the House and the Senate, and we've been walking around telling everybody and their mom, we have a mandate, a couple people voted for us, and we have the majority in both houses, and we have the presidency, and we happen to have a majority on the Supreme Court, so we run everything. Those people who say that can't in the same breath turn around to you and then tell you, it's your fault this government shutdown happened. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. You letting them paint you in that light, letting them paint you in that light, getting absolutely nothing in return for it, and then turning around with the op-ed and having the most lazy defense for it is just all terrible signals for the future. What are they going to do next time when they have to put a bill down, when they have to put something on the table? John Fetterman just said he would never, ever vote for a government shutdown. Now they know that. They can work with that. We got them to this point, and we have at least one Democrat who's willing to work with us. So they have, I think that's 54 votes that they need. So they only need to convince 6 other Democrats. Ugh. The fact that this is a long-term spending bill, the fact that the slush fund term that I've seen isn't wrong. It's a lot of executive power when it comes to the spending. It's the both houses of Congress ceding quite a bit of power. We're going to watch a video on it where I think it's absolutely phenomenal. Mehdi Hassan, if you haven't seen him, we're going to go through that. But it's a really great debate we're going to go through right after we finish through the notes. So the big thing about it, I've seen some, and I haven't been able to confirm, but it's like a couple people who report on the houses of Congress, and they have said it's unprecedented, like this level of a partisan bill not coming across the table, not working with the other side, being supported bipartisanly, having both uh, Democrats and Republicans vote for it in the Senate in order to get it through is that we went through the betrayal. It is awful that they did that to the Democrats, but the fact that they are ceding an unprecedented amount of power and fucking up in an unprecedented way is, I think, what you can point to is why were people getting so mad. One of the big talking points that I hear now about stuff, the White House press secretary, she'll come out and she'll say stuff like, oh, we have the most injunctions against us. Or I've heard debaters say, oh, well, Trump has the most charges against him. And I just want to be there to ask. This is why we have the channel, is to be there to ask, okay, what would you expect if a person broke more laws? If a person did more bad things, if a person did more unconstitutional things, let's not call them bad, let's call them what they are. Let's call them unconstitutional things. Don't you expect more challenges? I'll grant you, yeah, if there was some deep state cabal, if there was some big thing, you would expect to see this kind of, mismatched application of justice. You would expect to see it. But I don't really see this deep state exposed, especially when you're screaming things like fraud, when you're screaming things like there's a deep state, and then we never see anyone arrested. No one's ever arrested for these things. You pardon violent criminals, you do this stuff, but the people who fought against these violent criminals, they aren't being charged. They didn't do something wrong, did they? The consistency just falls apart whenever you think about these things. It's insane. It's insane. Speaking of insane, Chuck Schumer's op-ed, if you did read it, maybe I need to look and see if he's done an interview or something like that in the meantime. But the op-ed alone and the way it was released, like that sort of thing, just kind of felt pre-planned. And then reading through it or skimming through it, I'll fairly admit I didn't give it a full read. Skimming through it, every line just admitted every single time just how bad what he was doing was. Every line that he said admitted that they weren't doing a good job already, but they needed to keep doing it. Like, we need to keep the government open in order to fight the rampant closing of offices and departments and cutting and firing. We need to be able to stop that the way we have been. And it's like, oh, okay, well, you haven't been. And it's like, well, if the federal government is closed, then it'll be much worse. Then it'll be a bad thing. And it's like, oh, okay, so these federal workers that have this extra time, don't get me wrong, I don't want everybody to be a martyr or anything like that and go run out. But these people would be able to report on what's happening in their agency. They would be able to check in, tell people about what's going on. We would get some information into what's going on. And it would bring people to the table. It would bring the Republicans, who should have come to the table in the first place. Excuse me. I hate the framing that gets accepted on these things. You should have come to the table in the first place when you authored the bill. Why are we getting to this last second portion? Wasn't there some way that you could have come across and made sure that a couple House Democrats were on your side? Couldn't you have put something in this spending bill that limits that executive power, or at least doesn't cede more legislative power to the executive? Let's at least not do that. And that was the demand from the House. Nothing was done to meet any demands. You didn't come, so you don't get any votes. You gave no concessions, you get no votes. That's how it should be. That's how it should be with Russia. I hate to connect everything to everything all the time, but I feel like a good bit of why we're in the situation we're in there is the framing. People allow the framing to be, Russia's the aggressor. How many concessions are they willing to make? Why are we willing to make concessions to them all day, but we are not willing to ask for concessions of our own? Speaking of, that isn't a good transition at all, but I just don't think his reasons hold up, and I haven't seen him do any. Let me see if there's a Schumer interview. All more than a day old. I was expecting to see something from like this morning, like an answer or something like that. I would give him his due, but I really don't care. I don't care what he has to say after the fact, unless it's a direct. If he was going to give something similar to the op-ed in a way of defense, maybe I might consider it, but I'm just not going to waste my time on that. I'm just going to rip through. I did write a little bit on this. We're going to go through this. We do have one video that we're going to go through as well. We want to go through the Democrats. I have that on the left side of the screen, so we're definitely going to go through those. These are the Democrats in the Senate that flipped and allowed this to go. So the majority of the Democrats that are in the Senate voted no on this, but these 10 went against their own party and all of you and betrayed us. They really did. This was a partisan bill pass with bipartisan support to avert a shutdown while the originating party held both houses. Unprecedented surrender, and all in order to do the great job that Chucky has been doing so far of slowing hashtag treasonous Trump and hashtag Thelon. Because they haven't been doing a good job. I think that goes without saying. The reasoning in the op-ed was not internally consistent. He admits that they aren't stopping treasonous Trump with the government now, but then argues we need to sign on to an admittedly dogshit bill. He says it himself. It is dogshit. An admittedly dogshit bill that gives away long-term spending power in order to continue not stopping this regime. Hey, I know we're not stopping them now, but we have to give them more power in order to continue not stopping them. This reeks of a backroom deal with Schumer's flip-flopping and may be a sign that we have lost some Senate Democrats for good. How do you know they didn't make a deal for their own safety and protection? This is around the time where Trump extends the olive branch. Hey, we're in for a long 4 years. Here's the pitch, just so you know. Here's the scene, you know? Hey, Chucky boy, we're in for a long 4 years. We know you got your book deal coming up. We know you got your shit going on. We know you don't want to fucking be here. You want to stay here? You want to argue this? You want to do government shutdown? You want to have every donor and every person barking up your ass? Yeah, the young people will be pissed for a little bit, like they always are. They get rowdy, but then they calm the fuck down. They always do. Why don't you step into the office? Why don't you work with us? Get a couple other people on your side. Get the bill through the House. It gets us everything we need. If you shut down the government, we're going to fuck you up anyway. That's what you can tell them. If he would have shut down the government, Elon would have been able to do more. And scene. That's all you need. Like, it's a scuzzy backroom deal, and the pictures that have leaked from him in the Oval Office are just fucking, they reek of it. They reek of just like the flip-flop is a big thing. Telling your own party you're going to do one thing and then letting them vote on it only to backstab them with these Democrats that we'll talk about. But insane, truly an insane thing to do, and an unprecedented thing to do. May you live in interesting times. What a curse that turned out to be. The Democrats who voted to advance the measure were, and I think that's the big thing, is it pushes it forward to September. That's the big thing. It continues it, but it's not clean, and it wasn't negotiated. There's nothing in there that makes anything better, but it gives power, and it moves the issue all the way back to September. It's gross. So here we are. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, New York. Senate Democratic Whip Dick Durbin, and Senators Catherine Cortez Masto from Nevada. I don't understand what the fuck is going on with how this is written. This is why I don't do aim assist or anything like that. This shit's goofy. Maggie Hassan, New Hampshire. John Fetterman, Pennsylvania. Gary Peters, Michigan. Brian Schatz, Hawaii. Kirsten Gillibrand, New York. And Jeanne Shaheen, New Hampshire. Why the fuck is that and in there? Who did that? Oh, that's the Democrats. Okay, so that's the list of Democrats. But then also Angus King from Maine, an independent who caucuses with Democrats, also voted to advance the measure. Because I don't know if you know, it's Nebraska and Maine are the two that can split their vote. I bet it has something to do with that. But they can split their electoral votes, so I'm sure it has something to do with like an independent being there. I'm sure it has something to do with like weird something like that. But these are them: Schumer, Durbin, Cortez Masto, Hassan, Fetterman, Peters, Schatz, Gillibrand, Shaheen, King. Those are your Senate Democrats that literally gave the game away. Could have had a Republican-led House and Senate, let the government shut down immediately. Just a complete failure. Trump has failed in the executive. The Supreme Court has shown that they are flip-flopping on their own decisions. They were giving the game away from Trump. Now they are showing that they are not aligned with Trump. So it would be two of the three branches that are completely out of sorts, and this would have been the third one. This would have let people really see just how bad these people are at governance, and instead you gave them the game. It is truly hard to imagine why on earth you did this that isn't a nefarious purpose. It truly boggles the mind when your thoughts get trapped up like in a bottle. No, it boggles the mind. Like, it's frustrating to think about what could have motivated you that would have been good faith. I can't imagine what it might be, because the stated reasons they just don't hold up when you look at the power given away from the legislative branch to the executive branch by this bill is immense, enormous. For you to sign off on that, knowing how shit it is, saying out loud how bad it is, but signing off on it. Not even in a, this is the best we have sort of way. You're saying that this is bad and there are bad things to happen. You were just saying them putting the in Grand Theft Auto, the gun to my head, the metaphorical gun to my head, them doing that, of threatening the government shutdown, is enough for me to accept terrible bills. That's a dangerous, dangerous precedent to set, especially with the people you're dealing with that have shown that they're never going to come across. Speaking of, there's a big thing that I want to watch. Al Green. Anybody watch Al Green during the Trump speech in front of, what was the State of the Union? Or state address? I don't watch this shit. Who cares? He was speaking in front of Congress, and Al Green stood up and did the thing, standing up, shaking a cane, made a big deal, got taken out. More Democrats should have done it, or at least that's what, a lot of Democrats who weren't in the room think. Do more than hold the signs, do more than that, It's kind of a ridiculous thing to do because it just allows them to, you're sitting there and letting them make fun of you. It's just a terrible decision. I think whoever is making those types of decisions needs to be gone from the party. But the big thing is Al Green got censured, and there were Democrats that came across the aisle in order to do so, in order to make sure that they signed on for that, which it's less of like, I don't know. It might be a simple majority. That's all they need in order to do something like that. So the Republicans might just be flexing their nuts. And if they are, either way, it's alarming. Why on earth would you sign on either way? If they didn't need your vote and you signed on, what the fuck are you doing, like making a show? Are you saying that they're going to work with you in the future? Because it doesn't really seem like it. And then you're going against that. At least the majority of us are in both houses of Congress. The majority of people are in the House and the Senate. The majority of Democrats are going against them. So it's an interesting, another flip-flopping, But the big one for me is, after that censure, one of the Democrats who censured Al Green, a fellow Democrat, censured Lauren Boebert for disparaging comments made against Al Green. And I haven't seen anything yet, so I'm not going to report on anything yet because I have no idea what the vote is going to be like or when that's held. I think things like that are suspended, or if it doesn't go through at all, I'll see. But I wonder how many Republicans are going to come across the aisle in order to censure her. Because the response that she got from Mike Johnson was something to the effect of, oh, well, if I enforced every single rule, I'd have to censure everybody all the time. Everybody in trouble all the time, and we'd never get anything done. So you won't enforce any rules on your own side because it would take too long. But you will enforce rules on our side, and you'll get some of our dummies every single time. Just like the Schumer situation. Like, everybody knows this is bad. Everybody's screaming this is bad. But there's enough dummies on our side where we lose. This is where lack of purity testing does come in to hurt you. Keeping around the Chuck Schumers, keeping around these, old heads, it comes back to bite you. They didn't use the filibuster, which they argued was so important to have, and then didn't use it when they needed it.